Teachers, what is the most bleep thing have you done in your classroom? Story 1. Okay, I'm not proud of this, but here we go. It was my first year teaching high school English to a bunch of thugs. I was only a few years older than some of them. Near the end of class, two guys are arguing loudly, and I tell them to knock it off. They ask me to settle their argument for them. This on kid, let's call him Greg, says, "Mr. Canohead, if some guy puts a gun to your head and tells you to give him a blow J, you'd have to do it, right?" Greg, I say, that's not a conversation to have during class. The whole class is listening intently now. Well, says Greg, if someone put a gun to my head and told me to give him a blow J, I'd do it. Well, Greg, I said, I'll remember that the next time I have a gun. The class erupts in laughter. Somehow I don't get fired. Story 2. Teaching a science class about goats and sheep. To show the kids, middle schoolers and high schoolers, the animals up close, we planned on going to a livestock auction. To prep them for the auction, I told them to not point or raise their hands, because it was an actual auction and they might bid on the animal accidentally. For the respect of the community and business, they shouldn't do anything that looked like they were bidding. Then the questions came: what if we bid? Who would have to pay for it? What if I raise my hand to ask you a question? What if I think the animal is cute and bid on it? One kid wouldn't let it go, so I said jokingly, if you bid on any of the animals, I'll put you up for auction. Only African American kid in the class. Didn't get fired. Felt awful. Story 3. My father is a history teacher at a high school in the city. Once a particularly churlish student, who sat in the front row, was blatantly and shamelessly on his phone in the middle of class. Naturally, my father tells him to hand over the phone. Surprisingly, the kid gives it up without a fight. However, the kid quickly pulls another phone out of his pocket. "I have 2 phones," the kid sneers. He points to the phone in his hand. "This one is for business." He points to the phone in my father's hand. "And that one is for pleasure." "Well then," my father says, "that explains why this one is on vibrate." To this day, my dad is surprised that he didn't lose his job right then and there. Story 4. When I was in 8th grade, the class clown thought he was untouchable. He was a man among boys. I believe he was held back a year, taller than just about anybody, and growing in his facial hair. He was always doing whatever he wanted, throwing food at lunch, skipping class, and just about anything that he felt would get a reaction. All the girls loved him too. They thought he was the hottest thing this side of the sun, so they usually let him get away with saying or doing things most of us couldn't. One day, I guess all of that got to his head, because he was flirting with a group of girls in the back of the class, and decided whipping out his D was a good idea. But not only did he whip it out, he put it on the kid's shoulder in front of him and showed it off to the girls around him. He got in trouble because little Susie got scared by the anaconda and screamed. Everyone turned around and the classroom erupted with all kinds of reactions. Best I remember were Ms. French letting out an "Oh my God!" and the kid who had D shoulder screaming like a little girl. Story 5. I was in placement within a primary school and a little kid shit himself. I felt really bad for him and went to get a teacher without others finding out, but this kid started screaming that someone had shit under his desk. I then realized he had scooped it out and threw it under his desk, and squishing it under his shoe for authenticity. Anyway, I then had to escort a whole class out of a classroom and tell the real story to a teacher, which suspended the child for 2 days. Story 6. Not a teacher, but this happened when I was in high school, about 35 years ago. My English teacher was the hot teacher in the school. One day, she's sitting at her desk and I had a question to ask, raised my hand, went to her desk, and from where she was sitting and I was standing and the dress she was wearing, could see a good deal down her top. I said, "Wow, look at all those freckles," and went on to my question without missing a beat. Fast forward to the end of the school year, as we are taking our final exams, and she walks over to my desk, slowly leans over so I could get a good look, and whispers, "I've not worn this dress since you commented on all my freckles. Pause, now it's your turn to blush." She smiles and walks away. Story 7. My buddy once took me to some sketchy house to buy some weed, and there's an elementary school teacher in the living room shooting heroin. On her lunch break. She finishes, high as fuck, grabs her lunch off the kitchen table, and says, "Oh fuck, my lunch break is almost over. Time to get back to teaching kids." She laughs, walks out the back door, and my buddy asks the guy we were meeting if she really is a school teacher. The guy, also F up from slamming dope, says, "Yeah, she teaches little elementary kids and shit." Story 8. Not a teacher, but this happened to my teachers. There was two teachers who were married and were working at the same school. They also had rooms next to each other with a small storage room between them. In there they had a whole kitchen, shelves with glassware, a TV, and most importantly, a couch, and every so often they would meet there and have during lunch. The school found out, and they were both forced to quit. They moved to a different town and got new jobs at different schools. Story 9. My science teacher freshman year had the best way to get students to not text in class. He gave a student a not-in-use phone before class and told him to pretend he was texting halfway through class. He proceeded to walk towards the student and request the phone from him. The student pretends to put up a fight but eventually gives the teacher the phone. The class was on the second story, was an outside school, and the teacher started to walk to the door and throw the phone off the second story. The student, pretending, started to freak out, but all the other students' faces were all priceless. None of the students ever texted in class again. Story 10. Not a teacher but have a worthwhile story. 12th F grade. This kid was beating his D in the back of the class during Romeo and Juliet. No one noticed until the girl in front of him had to hand the classwork to him needed for the day. To clarify, the seating arrangement for the class was diagonal. The kid had the very last seat of the row that was tucked away in the corner, which is why no one noticed until the paperwork was being handed out. Everyone in the class started roaring in laughter when we all noticed it. The principal, the assistant principal, and the state trooper had to come up to remove him.